Hey everyone, welcome to SumZero. We are here with Brian O'Toole. He's the CEO of Blacksky Technologies, and I think we've got a pretty interesting discussion lined up ahead. Blacksky is a global satellite monitoring service, which I think Brian joined in 2016, and I think they're sort of on the forefront of a lot of the discussions we've had previously on SumZero regarding space tech, and kind of the potential there. Um, Brian, we spoke, or you spoke to SumZero earlier this summer, and so we'd love to sort of get an update on the business. Um, Maybe just to start off, can you just tell us a little bit about, I think what you think separates Black Sky within its sector, and just kind of give us a very quick high level overview of where you guys fit within the satellite space, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, happy to. First off, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to a really productive discussion. Yeah, so for those that don't know us, right, Black Sky is we're a real-time geospatial intelligence company. So we own and operate a constellation of small satellites combined with an AI-enabled software platform that provides dynamic monitoring of the most important strategic and economic assets and activities in the world. And we achieved earlier this year, we have a first of its kind platform that can provide reliable and dynamic hourly monitoring from space. That means, put that in plain English, any of you where you're sitting right now, there's one of our satellites flying over the top of your building every hour. And anybody with a access to any device, browser, through our platform can task those satellites yourselves and get imagery and analytics delivered back in your inbox in 90 minutes or less, all fully automated. So that's changed the customer experience from put this capability in the power of any user, whether it's a military planner or a construction supervisor that's monitoring their local projects, or someone working crisis response for things like Hurricane Ian. So that's the capability we built. We just achieved that milestone earlier this year. And to your question, what's happened? This summer, all of that was validated by a $1 billion 10-year contract award that we got from the U.S. government's National Reconnaissance Office, and that's to buy on a subscription basis our high frequency imagery, that capacity on a global scale for the next 10 years from our current satellites and our next generation satellites. We also were awarded a significant contract with NGA, providing economic indicator monitoring from space, and that contract doubled in the last year as we deliver that capability. And we continue to expand internationally. We also announced recently from an existing customer a $10 million 1-year subscription to our capacity over their area of interest. So it's been a tremendous year for Black Sky. We've had 9 consecutive quarters of growth. We've nearly doubled revenues 2 years in a row, and we just raised our guidance for the full year. So we're on.
Yeah, just to set the Brian, just to set the backdrop, I was reading the third quarter results. You guys are forecasting somewhere between 60 and 66 million of sales in 2022, right? Is that still is that the latest guidance? Got it.
We've indicated we'll be toward the higher end of our guidance.
Right. And so of that total revenue base, can you just maybe segment that for us in terms of where those revenues are coming from?
Yeah, the majority of our revenues are U.S. international government business. primarily in the defense and intel sector. We have specifically gone to market focused on those sectors. They tend to be, well, one, they are the most challenging. They have the most challenging requirements and needs in the world. So, to have that group of customers that rely on our service every day for their day-to-day intelligence was a super important major step for us in the last couple of years. But also these tend to be very long-term, highly sticky customers that expand what they buy on an annual basis, and that aligns with our land and expand strategy. So that's where the majority of our revenue is coming from today. That's expanding, as evidenced by a lot of the announcements we've been making this year. Commercial is in very early days. It's a small percentage of our revenue right now.
So just on the government side, I mean, would the CIA use your satellites to track what's going on in Ukraine, or what? Can you maybe give us some more tangible examples of how the service is used?
Yeah, so we enable our customers to actually task our constellation where they want it. So, for example, to your example in the Ukraine, we are servicing both U.S. customers, allied partners, as well as commercial customers in monitoring what's happening in over that crisis region. And we don't dictate what they look like. They're able to say, I want to monitor, for example, different border crossings to understand potentially what the humanitarian situation might be happening there.
Yeah.
Particularly with the large amount of refugee activity that's come out of that crisis. So we've been doing everything from monitoring the nuclear facilities there, because I believe over 60% of the energy on the grid in that country comes from those plants. So there's been a lot of interest in what the implications could be if those come offline, from not only humanitarian aspect, but from a supply chain element as well. So a whole range of applications, from humanitarian to supply chain intelligence to supporting situational awareness on the crisis itself.
What percent of the globe is covered by your constellation?
So we have our satellites in a orbit which, if you think about it, covers north and south of the equator about plus or minus 50 degrees. So not quite all the way to the poles, but our satellites fly. Think of it flying counterclockwise to the Earth around the equator, and that's unique in the industry for a full-scale constellation. It gives us this ability to see everything once every hour. You don't get that if you're in other orbits, which are what's called polar sun synchronous. They're going north to south and they're looking at the whole Earth, but they only can see the same time every day, 10:30 in the morning. So we have that ability that gives us very high frequency monitoring capability from dawn to dusk. The other thing to me, which makes sense from a business standpoint, is 90% of the GDP occurs in that part of the world. And that's what we're interested in monitoring. So we have a taskable system to look at things like ports and airports, important economic assets that our customers are interested in. Not only an individual customer, but lots of customers are interested in the same locations because of the economic and strategic impacts of these of the activities in those locations.
And so how, just in trying to understand the operational leverage built, within the business, like how many satellites are in the constellation? How often do they need to be replaced? Um, what's sort of and then in your opinion, I'm just curious like how much operational, how would you describe the operational leverage of the business model?
So as we've been, so we have, just for facts, we have 14 satellites on orbit. We'll be launching a couple more here starting early next year. And then we're going to be um, uh, adding our Generation 3 satellites to that constellation starting late next year, which brings all kinds of advanced technology over what we have today. So these satellites last. We started this years ago. We thought these would last about 3 years. They're now over 4 years in operations. But the leverage we get out of this is the unit economics of the satellites enable us to provide data at much lower cost than what has traditionally been available in the market. The other leverage we get, and we can collect once and sell many times. And like in the case of the Ukraine, we're monitoring that region significantly for lots of customers, but lots of customers are also buying the data we collected for others. So we're able to monetize that many times. The other thing that we're doing is we also have an upsell of analytics. So not only just the picture, but some analytic products that, for example, if we're looking at airports, we're evaluating types of aircraft there, how many are there, developing patterns. We can do similar things with commodities like coal and iron ore volumes at different facilities, ports, things like that. So we are getting into the business of real-time monitoring with dynamic change analytics. And that is as you can see in what our recent reporting, almost 90% of our revenue is coming from these high margin imagery and analytic services, which is driving very good margin performance in the business.
And when you mention analytics, like what would those analytics be? I know I was reading somewhere that like Palantir has, I don't know if they're still investors in Blacksky, but are companies like that using some of these analytics, or is it again mostly governments that are relying on you guys for analytics? But what are those kind of like what exactly would those entail?
Yeah, so like I just gave you an example of a monitoring an airfield. So we do that. We're doing that for governments. So we'll monitor hundreds of airfields, and instead of shipping them the imagery, we'll tell them, we'll send them reports or the data about what types of activity is going on in those airfields, how many aircraft, how long are they there, what type. They used to do all that manually. So they would buy the imagery and they'd have analysts looking at it, counting things by hand. So now they're just buying that as a service. We're working with commercial customers that are looking at using analytics to monitor the volumetrics of like coal or iron ore facilities. That gets a sense of determining the amount of supply that can be coming into the market, things of that nature. So it's a wide range of those types of analytics. And what's powerful about our platform is we can enable that to be accessible through a platform like Palantir, where Palantir users can access the imagery and the analytics directly within the Palantir software. They can also build their own analytics using our data in that platform. And then we announced earlier this year, we're doing the same thing with ESRI, ESRI, which is the largest geospatial software company in the world, enabling their users to do that as well. So our ability through APIs and to do all this on demand is what is enabling us to partner with these types of platforms to make our services available to a much broader audience much faster.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about image resolution and just you mentioned your next gen satellites, but like how refined are these images?
So right now our imagery is 80 centimeters to a meter, and our next generation satellites, which start going up next year, bring that down to 35 to 50 centimeters. To put that in kind of perspective, 50 centimeters is the size of home plate. So we're able to see resolve to that level of resolution and better in our next generation satellites. Most of the market requirements are met with between 50 centimeters and 100 and a meter for most applications. So we're our strategy is to combine resolution with high frequency to provide these monitoring applications at economics that are going to drive a lot of consumption and drive a larger adoption in the analytics part of the market, which is the largest part of the TAM.
Yeah, you mentioned before that you guys signed a $1 billion 10-year contract. I don't know if you mentioned the company name, but what is the typical contract length? I mean, maybe you could, and terms even, if you can just kind of describe what a typical contract looks like.
Well, we're at the end of the day, we're a subscription business. So we have a number of contracts that are multi-year in nature. Some of the government ones, it might be a multi-year contract, but they get funding on an annual basis. So, but our goal is to enter into multi-year type agreements, and especially with the large government customers, because they actually want to, because they want to secure our capacity over a period of time, so they have assured access to our imaging services.
Yeah, and getting back to the question about Moat, what would you say is the moat for the business?
I think it's our software. There's really two elements in our platform, and that's obviously we've got a proprietary space capability that provides this hourly monitoring from space, but our software is what is enabling access. It's enabling us to do this in real time. We can integrate third-party content and analytics into our platform, and we can iterate on software and the products and services that we can unlock much faster than just companies that are focused on the satellites and the basic web application to consume their imagery. So and frankly, the software is what's been enabling us to win a significant amount of business, like the contracts we have at NGA, for example, where it's software-enabled monitoring and analytics. And so it's that platform, and we, as a business, we started investing in the development of that platform almost 10 years ago now, 5 years before we had satellites on orbit.
Yeah. Can you talk about the total addressable market here and just how you're thinking about it over the, medium to long term?
Yeah, I think of the market, really, there's kind of the data market, which is buying imagery. There's well defined studies on the size of that TAM. It's, several $billions. But the analytics market, and everybody's got different views of the numbers, but that market is 5 to 10 times larger than the data market. It's highly fragmented, and it goes across a lot of other verticals. So, our focus is on that part of the TAM. Obviously, we have data, big data sales, but the long term is in providing analytics on demand as a subscription service through the software platform, and doing it in real time. And that's the niche that we're carving out. So think Google Earth is static. What we're doing is enabling that to be dynamic. And
Yeah.
and
Do you get customers that don't even want the imagery? They're just looking for analytics around, let's say it's like counting airplanes at an airport or something like that, where they don't necessarily need to see images, but they just want that data.
Yeah, the big NGA contract we have, they don't get imagery. They just want to know how many aircraft are there, how many ships, what type, and that's all we send them. We have commercial customers that I'll go to the commodities example. They don't want the image. They don't want the imagery. They just want to know how big's the inventory in that facility, and that's all they want. They otherwise they'd be investing in all kinds of expensive people and software to do that analysis themselves, when all they really want is the answer.
Yeah.
And so, I use the generic example of, counting cars in parking lots. It's like, nobody wants the imagery. They want to just tell me how many are there and when.
Right.
And I can bring that data into my environment and do my own further analysis on that. So that's where our model is going, where it's just, you can subscribe to those answers.
Yeah. If there were, just like 2 things that you wanted investors to know about the business, what would it be?
I think one, this is really early days. I think we are in the, we are just starting to get into the next era of new commercial space. And, I kind of equate it to the internet, the beginning of the internet, where a lot of capital went in to things like networks and, basic capability. No one imagined the Airbnbs and Ubers and all that would be powered, would enable those types of businesses. I think that's where this industry's at. Launch has enabled more affordable, reliable access to space. The cost of satellites are coming down, and the cloud computing infrastructure and AI is enabling the analytics. And then you're seeing a whole set of new space communication networks coming online. This is all massively enabling infrastructure for applications we haven't imagined yet.
Yeah.
I think when I started this, there was, to me, it wasn't about the satellites. It was about the enabling access to all the data. So we went from a commercial satellites of tens to hundreds and now thousands. And, that's going to happen. It is happening, which is going to completely change how we look at our planet, and the data we have access to. And so it's a big market. It's massively emerging. It's at an inflection point. And so I think that's what has me super excited about where we are as a business because we're at the forefront of all that.
So speaking of inflection points, I'm sure, you, like all of us, you follow kind of to some degree what's going on in the macro environment. And inflation has certainly put a damper on, much of the sort of technology enabled segment of the markets. Has or how has some of that macro headwind affected the business? Or are you not really seeing much impact from rates rising and sort of some of the sort of financing constraints that we're seeing just with the markets coming down?
Yeah, we're in a, we sell into a pretty resilient customer base, right? The national security sector, US internationally, is in a has significant amount of demand. And we're still largely, in my mind, in a supply constrained environment on access to trusted data and providers like us. And so you've seen the growth we're experiencing, the demand is there. We're bringing a new capability to those customers with this high frequency capability. So we're on the trajectory on new customer acquisition and growth through our land and expand strategy. And I think the economy will work itself out here, but we're seeing significant demand, and we've got the capacity on orbit to address that demand. So we're happy where we are.
Have you had to change your hiring trajectory at all, or has that pretty much been consistent?
Been consistent. We run a pretty streamlined operation as it is. And so, what you're seeing, especially if you kind of look at the last couple quarters, you're seeing the cost of sales margins and the EBITDA performance really reflecting the long-term business model of the company. And that's because we're operating off a fairly fixed operating base. And as we monetize our capacity and we upsell with high margin analytics, we're delivering an attractive financial proposition here. So we do continue investing, but we haven't had to change our plan.
Would you expect to need to raise capital in 2023, or is the plan to kind of continue as you have and just ride that momentum with respect to sales growth, where you'd expect to reach profitability before needing any extra cash? Or
we have, as we said in our last call, we have enough capital for the foreseeable future, and we're continuing to execute and show the performance in the business. So we will evaluate that as we go along, but we're highly focused on continuing to drive our revenue growth.
Got it. So, and then from a competitive landscape standpoint, like, how do you think of the space in terms of, what happens if more companies enter the market? Who would you say are your chief competitors today? If you just give a lay of the landscape, I think that'd be super helpful for folks, especially if they're new to the industry.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's only a couple of us that do this right now. So it's a small set of suppliers out there that have a mature, reliable service on orbit. And you have those companies that have really nice, exquisite satellites that provide very high resolution imagery. Those are good for mapping applications and exquisite intelligence applications. I kind of put those in the kind of static mapping world. And then you have a couple companies that are trying to map the entire planet. That's a little bit of a different strategy. We're, as I said earlier, we're in the dynamic monitoring element of this. And so it's a unique offering that we're bringing to the market right now. Especially when you think about the experience that we provide of letting anybody task and get their data and analytics automatically and on demand. So as I said earlier, I think there's a large part of the market, which is the analytics value-added services element, which is yet really, we're just getting into that. It's a supply constrained environment and space for this type of data. And it's a big market. So, we're growing because we're offering something new to the market that they haven't had before. And there's a lot of demand for it.
What are the risks to the business model that keep you up at night?
Well, we retired a lot of risks in the last 12 months. Last November, October, we doubled the size of our constellation. We added a couple more satellites in March. And so we now have enough capacity on orbit to power the revenue growth in the business for the next couple of years. So we retired a lot of the risk in space. We're well on our way on our what we call our Gen 3 satellites. We had some concerns a little bit on supply chain going back 12 months, but most all that's been mitigated. And then we've been winning multi-year contracts. So we've got very good revenue with good long-term customers. And so we've got good revenue visibility going forward. We have enough capacity on orbit. We're investing more in our software and analytics, which is upsell to our current customers. And then we also grew our sales force significantly in the last 12 months, particularly internationally. And that's now bearing fruit as those opportunities are translating into contracts. So all in all, I'm really happy where we are. Significant progress in a short 12 months. And obviously getting validated by the level of customers that have validated us with the types of contracts we're winning is a testament to what we have and can offer the market.
So even if the satellite fleet itself remained constant, just in terms of you mentioned having, I think, 14 of them, could the services side of the business 10x from here? Like what's the sort of revenue growth potential there, just even if you kept the fleet as it is now in terms of size?
Yeah, like I said, it's a couple years of growth that we have there now. So, and then obviously we can collect what we could collect, we can sell many times, and we have analytics upside. So, we have a lot of operating leverage and capacity from what we have on orbit right now, and we'll start introducing new satellites into that. It will incrementally expand it starting next year and into 24 and 25. We feel good about that, and that these next gen satellites are a derivative of the ones that we have up there already. So this has been a pretty mature design that's performing well, been validated by several of our customers over the last year going into production. So, so we feel good about that. So we got plenty of capacity, really, behind the growth that we need to achieve on our plan.
Yeah. Is there something that you feel like the markets just simply don't appreciate about the business, or maybe, like, what would you say is either misunderstood or just underappreciated by investors?
I think most investors look at a lot of us and, think, oh, there's going to be, they sell imagery, so it's going to be a winner take all market, and that's not the case. It's a big market. There's different applications. The constellations are purpose built to do different things, and it's not a winner take all market. It's an early market, with the larger opportunity being in the analytics and the insights that can be derived by these types of systems. So if this were a pure data play, one might make that argument, but that's not the case.
And in terms of the team itself, how many, I guess, engineers, or I don't know if you'd call them analysts or something else, like, are working on the software itself to, process all this imagery? And I mean, it almost sounds like you guys have like an internal Palantir of sorts, right? Like kind of a group of people that
we are a software company.
Yeah.
The majority of our engineers, majority of our technical staff, I mean, we have an excellent aerospace group that designs our satellites. But the majority of our technical staff are software engineers and AI and machine learning experts. So we are much more of a software company. And, we have a joint venture that manufactures our satellites. And so we've got a vertically integrated tech stack here with a manufacturing capability, but the core areas we've been investing in is in the software and the analytics.
That's really interesting. Brian, I don't have any other questions. If there's anything else you want to get off your chest, please feel free. But I think this has been super educational. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to following the business.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Yeah, I think you can tell we're excited about where we are. We had a terrific 2022. We're looking forward to next year. As I said, we're in early days of an exciting next phase of commercial space, and Blacksky is one of the few companies that have really positioned well, not only for the space side of it, but the software and the analytics side, which is the nascent element of this market. So thanks for the opportunity to be here. And obviously, if there's those out there that want to learn more, reach out to our team, and be happy to chat.
That sounds great. We'll help facilitate those conversations. But thanks, Brian. We'll look forward to tracking Blacksky over the coming year, and best of luck for the future.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
See you.